In a bathtub. When John awakens, he discovers he has amnesia. He sees a cut on his forehead when he looks in the mirror. When he discovers clothing nearby, he puts it on. He searches the room for hints. John discovers a briefcase bearing the initials Cage and a few keys. More clothing and a postcard from Shell Beach, which brings back childhood memories of the location, are found inside. John answers the phone when it suddenly begins to ring. It's Dr. Daniel who says that a botched experiment caused John's memories to be erased. Additionally, several men are currently searching for him. He must thus depart right away. John hangs up when he notices something behind the bed, even though he wants to know more. As he approaches, he is appalled to see a dead woman with spiral-shaped, bleeding scars. A blood-stained knife is also on the table. He instantly goes out of the room and learns he's in a motel. A gang of pale, eerie creatures known as the Strangers are revealed when the elevator stops. John dashes downstairs as a result. John discovers that everyone in the lobby, including the woman on the phone and the receptionist, is asleep. When he opens the door, she collapses as though she had passed away. Everyone wakes up without realizing they were asleep when the clock strikes 12. John is called by name by the receptionist, who informs him that since he paid for 3 weeks, he will want additional funds if he intends to stay longer. John leaves the hotel without paying, throws the luggage in the river, and wanders the streets after briefly consulting the reservation book to find out his own name and address. He observes that there are spirals on his fingertips. When the hotel receptionist arrives to John's room to empty it, the strangers who discovered an enigmatic syringe on the floor throw the receptionist against the wall. When the receptionist informs them that John has departed, they touch his face to put him to sleep. Emma, meantime, is employed at a pub as a singer. A co-worker informs her that a man who was her husband's doctor left a card for her after her performance. Emma meets Daniel, who is experimenting with a rat in a maze, after following the location. After a heated argument, Emma, John's wife, hasn't seen him in 3 weeks. According to Daniel, John may be deluded and even violent because he is experiencing a psychotic episode and has lost all recollection. He wants Emma to give him a call as soon as John gets in touch with her because he believes it will happen shortly. Inspector Frank and many police officers soon show up to the hotel to look into the murder. In the past month, there have been 6 naughty workers with spiral scars. John is now the primary suspect. Detective Eddie tries to become involved in the inquiry, but the police swiftly dismiss him because they believe he is insane because he keeps talking about these weird creatures observing them. When Frank receives the fingerprint findings later at the police station, he observes their spirals. Frank has to inform Emma that John might be a murderer when Emma shows up to report her husband is missing. Let's go back to John. Because he had forgotten his wallet a few days prior, the server instantly knows him when he walks into a restaurant that looked familiar. John doesn't know how to use the several meal windows, but the server places the wallet behind one of them. When 2 officers enter at that very moment, John becomes so frantic that he uses some sort of mind power to smash the window open. He tries to leave the restaurant after stealing his wallet, but he stops when the police ask him questions. A woman named May enters and declares that he is with her. Thus, the police release them. John follows May to her flat, where he finds Emma's photo in the wallet while she gets dressed. It dawns on him then that May is a mischievous employee. However, he discovers she has a daughter and departs before he can take any action. While exploring the area, he comes across a sign advertising Shell Beach, which corresponds with his postcard. As he checks his pockets, he looks more closely and discovers all the newspaper stories about the killings. When John realizes he did it, he collapses in disbelief. The strangers arrive at that precise moment and attempt to lull him to sleep with their hand trick. John, however, is immune. A stranger then pulls out a knife and makes an assault attempt. But he falls when the wooden platform cracks beneath him. John's power is activated by the other armed strangers, shattering more wood. Another stranger chokes after falling and becoming entangled in some rope. After flying back to the platform, the first stranger tries to use his knife. John then moves aside and tumbles into the pit as well. The indications are impacted by his weight as he grips the rope. Gears, which results in a portion of it falling and severing the stranger's skull. The final stranger is in excruciating pain from the noise that results. As John ascends again, he witnesses a slimy creature emerge from the deceased stranger, and the lights are blown up by the sounds it makes as it passes away. John seizes the opportunity to flee as soon as possible. They talk about John's abilities later, in the stranger's hiding place. They claim that he can tune. Additionally, that imprinting technique didn't work. They decide to look for John at home as Daniel hasn't called with any updates. Emma is startled to see John waiting at the table after taking a shower. He can't recall her. He only arrived at this place because the keys worked and he had read it in the hotel book. Before revealing that John left their home after learning she was having an affair, Emma hands him Daniel's card. John tells her that he doesn't believe he is the murderer because he was with May and didn't have any violent thoughts. He instantly flees after spotting a police cruiser outside the window. However, Frank shows up in the corner to take him into custody. John leaps to the lower floors to make his getaway quicker as Frank leaps to pursue him when Emma shoves him to divert his attention. John discovers that there is no way out of the room. Nevertheless, John is able to exit the building when a door miraculously materializes on the wall. The door is gone when Frank gets to the same room. However, he discovers Daniel's card on the floor. When John catches a cab later, he discovers the driver has a Shell Beach memento. He then inquires as to how to get there. Despite having visited the beach numerous times, the driver is perplexed because he cannot recall its location. John sees Frank attempting to question the doctor when the cab leaves him off at Daniel's building, but Daniel refuses to provide him with any information. When Frank departs, John starts to pursue him. Shortly after, a stranger approaches Daniel in the bathhouse and shows him the syringe he discovered in John's room. He attempted to imprint John, but he woke up, knocked the syringe off his hand, and fled, Daniel explains. He reassures the stranger that John only has flashes of memory. However, John's ability to tune gives him the same power as strangers, which alarms the stranger. During their conversation, the man determines they want to print John and that they need to catch him for another reason. John is listening in on everything while skulking around. On his way out, he inspects Daniel's suitcase and discovers the syringes. To encourage Daniel to swim more, the stranger moves the pool ladder. Frank pays Eddie a visit in the interim, and he continues to draw spirals on the walls. After working on a very odd case, Eddie lost his mind. He now claims to spend his days going around in circles on the train. There's no way out, he says, adding that he also thinks in circles. His concerns also include memory impairments. In addition, he questions the identity of everyone he knows and doesn't believe the woman in the house is his true wife. Edie flips out and claims there was never a case when Frank inquires about it. It's all a big joke, too. John sees Daniel walk toward an old building a few moments later, and a door opens to let the doctor in. However, John is no longer able to pursue him. Daniel uses the various items the strangers are cataloging inside to make a drug that modifies memories. The intruders force him to float and ask him why John wasn't sleeping in the motel. Daniel doesn't know. However, he hypothesizes that John is changing and adapting. Since it's almost midnight, he attributes this to the human soul, which is what the visitors are searching for. When their large clock strikes 12, all of the strangers congregate in the center of their hiding place and wait. Every machine in the city, including clocks and cars, stops functioning and everyone falls asleep at once. The world freezes, and John, the only one awake, freaks out. When he tries to wake them up, no one responds. The strangers at the headquarters declare that it's time to adjust and turn on a mechanism that causes dozens of tall buildings to emerge from the earth throughout the city. John then witnesses Daniel and the strangers emerge from the hiding place carrying the bodies of sleeping people who have been dropped off at various buildings and given serum injections in the foreheads. When these individuals receive the injection, the building rooms transform, granting them a fresh start. A few of them get wealthier. Others find new employment. This even affects the children. After Daniel finishes, John stops him as he leaves and begins to shake him while requesting an explanation. Because Daniel won't respond. When John loses his temper, he unintentionally uses his talents, sending Daniel hurtling through the air. Daniel assures John he has the power, the tuning, unimpressed. The buildings used to be altered by strangers. He offers to assist him in managing it. But right now, John has to flee as the strangers come out. The clock is set aside at the headquarters, and the city comes to life. The injected individuals now think that the memories from the serum have always been their actual lives. Frank discovers a spiral in his coffee that resembles John's fingerprint when he wakes up. In order to track John's movements, Daniel makes a new serum the next night that retains his memories. Mr. Hand offers himself up as a test subject. He is therefore bound to a gadget before Jackson and Daniel. The hands. His body trembles as the memories of John's whole life flood his mind. But he survives the experience and is ready to hunt. They then float around the city and enter May's house to question her about John forcing her to speak by drawing a knife. As John examines the postcard's reverse, he discovers that notices is signed by Carl Harris, whose name corresponds to the initials on the luggage. He searches the yellow pages for the name, locates the address, obtains instructions from a newspaper stand, and boards the subway. He quickly switches lines to go to Shell Beach after spotting it on the subway map during the journey. He is unable to find a means to get to the outside stations, though, regardless of the subway he takes. Eddie, who is close by, overhears John speaking to a guard. Because he has already tried, he knows that there is no way out of the city. He reveals that he was a police officer once, but the strangers enjoy exchanging stories and occupations. But they don't know this. Like John, Eddie woke up in the middle of the process, so he remembers. He then declares that he has discovered a way out. John is shocked to see how a train kills the poor man. Shortly after, the strangers track John down to Emma's house. When Mr. Hand discovers her observing the river, they engage in a philosophical discussion about how memories shape who we are as people. Hand departs recalling John's story after receiving additional images of John's life with Emma. When Emma arrives at May's apartment, she discovers her dead and covered with spiral scars. Frank, who now suspects her as well, catches her just as she is ready to flee. They then discover a sketch depicting the stranger's entrance and May's daughter hiding beneath the bed. John eventually locates Carl's address, an aquarium. He yells, but no one emerges, so he breaks the front glass to enter. Carl threatens him as he enters a dimly lit room, but he drops his weapon when he sees John. John's uncle Carl has a lot of photos of him as a child, especially of Shell Beach, where he grew up. Carl can't recall how to get to the house where John's family perished in the fire. John learns that the sun has never risen in the city after noticing that the images are bright. It's always dark. John's arm was burned in the fire, as seen in one of the photos. Everything is a lie, though, because he no longer has a scar. Nevertheless, he finds a journal and consents to spend the night in his former chamber. When he was younger, he wrote about Shell Beach. It's vacant, though. Simultaneously, Carl calls Emma in private to inform her of her husband's location. John, though, hears him and runs out the window. Unaware that someone is after them, Emma gives Frank the information and the two of them set out to find him. When the clock strikes 12, everyone goes to sleep. After locating John, the strangers start to change the steps. To try to stop him, he is on. As the city changes all around him, John continues to run until he reaches the roof and jumps from building to building. Mr. Hand suddenly tries to strike and blocks his path, but John knocks him down with a punch and takes his knife. John reveals that the aliens have constructed this city using people's stolen memories from various eras and threatens Han to get him to talk. Since the strangers aspire to be like them, they hone it every night to discover what makes individuals human. Before explaining that the strangers are the mushy beings John saw the previous night and that they use dead human corpses as their vessels, Han starts making fun of John's memories. He tries to strangle John, but the roof changes and tosses them both off just in time. John sees more individuals pursuing him as he struggles to stay on a balcony. In addition, a building is approaching. Before the two buildings collide and one of the foreigners is killed, a desperate John smashes the window and hides in the room behind him. The second stranger enters as well and follows John through the hallways. After struggling to open a door he finds while running, John nearly falls off the building. The stranger bites his hand, causing him to bleed as he clings to the edge. Fortunately, John is able to leap on a structure that is expanding close by and make his escape through the roofs once more. John arrives in an alley with strangers all around him as the tuning time comes to a close and everyone awakens. But he is swiftly taken away by Frank and Emma, who arrive in a car. Frank shows John images of the victims in the Shell Beach book when questioning him later at the police station. John was surprised. There are now drawings on the pages. He uses the absence of sunshine and people's memory loss as evidence that something odd is happening. However, Frank doesn't think he's real. Frank is shocked when John uses his power to make the book float. After being given permission to speak with Emma, John informs her that he is no longer angry about the affair because the memories aren't genuine. Additionally, he claims that their marriage is still in its infancy. Emma believes that she truly loves him. The police take John away after he breaks the glass and kisses her using his abilities. All of the police officers were put to sleep when the strangers suddenly stormed into the station. John tells Emma that he is no longer upset about the affair because the memories aren't real after being granted permission to talk to her. He also asserts that they are still in the early stages of their marriage. Emma thinks she really does love him. John uses his powers to break the glass and kiss her before the police haul him away. When the strangers unexpectedly barged into the station, all of the police officers were put to sleep. Frank suddenly shows up, reveals that he has freed John so they may discover the truth, and holds Daniel at gunpoint. Together, telling the doctor to lead them to Shell Beach, the two load Daniel into Frank's vehicle and head out. John uses his power to torture Daniel until he accepts when he tries to deny, claiming there is nothing there. They discover the bridge is gone when they get to the river. John pushes Daniel down when he tries to flee and says they'll continue on a boat. Emma, meantime, finds everything she owns gone as she walks into her apartment. However, the strangers are present. She is called Anna by hand. Han blocks Emma's path back to the boat when she tries to flee. Daniel is recounting the events that transpired. The strangers are extraterrestrials that kidnapped several people and used them as test subjects in this gloomy metropolis. In an attempt to comprehend what makes people special and, ideally, discover ways to help us, they mix and match their memories. The race is in danger of going extinct, and all of the outsiders have a common thinking. Therefore, they believe that human spirits can save them. Light frightens them. Their city is usually gloomy because of this. The aliens had no idea how to manipulate the human mind, so Daniel had to comply. Because they were unable to comprehend it. But his own memories had to be erased. John's memories are all false, and his powers recently produced the pictures in the notebook. When they finally arrive at the outer walls, they find Shelby, just a sign. Nothing exists outside the city, according to Daniel. Nevertheless, Frank and John begin tearing down the wall. The alien account is confirmed to humans when they nearly fall through the ensuing hole and are startled to glimpse outer space on the other side. Frank opens fire, killing a handful of the foreigners as they approach with Emma. A stranger tries to attack John, but Frank defends him, and they unintentionally fall into the hole and drown. Han threatens to kill Emma, but John wants to continue fighting. Thus, he gives up and allows someone to put him to sleep. Moments later, John wakes up, tied to a device in the stranger's hideout. The leader declares that the experiment is over and that John will be imprinted with the stranger's memories so they can share his soul, despite the crowd's desire for his death. Pretending to initiate the procedure, Daniel injects a sequence of memories that depict the doctor instructing John on how to regulate the tuning and make the most of his abilities. John opens his eyes abruptly, and with a single thought, he destroys the device. The strangers are then pushed back by him using his abilities, and Daniel is also released from a device. A brawl breaks out as the leader quickly uses his own abilities to counterattack. The room that John and the stranger are in is being destroyed by their constant pressing. The other foreigners flee in fear as a result. The entire building trembles and starts to collapse as the metal produces spikes and rising structures and the electricity starts to shock any stranger. It can even reach John and the leader's powers, which crash in the center of the room. Strangers continue to be crushed by the rubble or plummet to their deaths. The strangers also begin to drift into space when the walls and roof collapse. The powers finally exploded into a citywide blast of light. Begins to collapse above them as well. As John flies toward the sky and the enormous clock rises from the earth, Daniel escapes. Following suit, the leader hurls a knife at John, who uses his strength to block it and throws it back. The leader is stabbed, and it is flung into an exploding water tank. The alien emerges from the corpse and vanishes into thin air. John then inquires about Emma, to which Daniel responds that she no longer exists as a result of receiving new memories at the most recent tuning. They are also unable to bring her back because the memory factory has been destroyed. John then surrounds the city with an ocean after using his power to drive the water out. As he declares his intention to visit Shell Beach, he also starts to restore the city. Emma awakens in the meantime as Anna, a local theater staffer. When her shift is finished, she also travels to Shell Beach by bus. John ignores the hand that approaches him at the same moment and generates a shower by the sea before creating the sunrise while the light burns his hand. Emma is reunited with John at the shoreline bridge. She asks him to take a stroll on the beach even though she doesn't recognize him.